Welcome, everyone, to the Teacher Companion Podcast, where we dive into practical conversations about everything education. I am Sanjay Allen, your host. I am a teacher of 20 years. As a matter of fact, this year is my 20th year. I teach a group of students, and now I have turned into a new focus in education, which is mentoring teachers. I love mentoring teachers because I like to see where they are and the work that they put in, and then the end product. What did we create? A better teacher is in everyone, a new teacher, a middle teacher, and a seasoned teacher. There is a better teacher in you. So, my gift to you is to help you refine the tools that you have. In this ever changing world of education, what we're doing now is transforming everything from paper to digital. And I know that some teachers are very frustrated. I know for me, it was a little frustrating because I like the paper and pencil. But today we're going to focus on how to refine the tools that we have. And yes, we are going to focus a little bit on it being digital because that's some of the things that we need to do. We need to keep up with the times. The kids are on iPads, they're on cell phones, they're on laptops. So we need to transfer the focus to being able to assess them where they're using their tools, and that is with the technology. So today we're going to talk about refining your craft as a teacher. And I have a few things that I think will help you in this episode. I know that we're going to talk about the importance of your growth. Your growth. Before we talk about student growth, we're going to talk about teacher growth because everything that you do is a direct impact on the growth of your students. In the beginning of the school year, they come in and they take a pre assessment to see where they are. And in the end, they take another assessment so that we can compare apples to apples. Somewhere in some of those standards, and of course, we would like to see every single one of them, and that will be ideal, but it doesn't always happen that way. But the standards should show some growth, if not full proficiency. If they started deficient, they should now be proficient even at the basic level. So that's what we want to talk about because that is where a teacher that is frustrated will see the most growth happening, which is the work that they're going to do in the middle of beginning school year and ending the school year. So let's get started with conversations about growing you professionally so that you arrive relaxed, cool, calm, and successful at the goals that you set. So, the first thing that I want to discuss with you are strategies for refinement. The strategies that we have aren't always bad because they didn't work. Sometimes they just need to be refined. Maybe they worked 80%, but if you're working on getting the students to a certain point, 100% is what we're always striving for. And I'm never going to say that you strive for 80 because that's a B. We always want an A. The students want perfection. We also want perfection. So we want to be at that 100%. So we need to start at the beginning, which is planning. Planning. The planning it's the vehicle that we're going to use to navigate through the refinement system. How do we get there? By assessing what we do. If you're a seasoned teacher, and right now I am talking to a seasoned teacher because you have tried so many different things. Some of them worked, some of them didn't work. A new teacher, everything you're trying is going to be new for you, and you won't have a basket of tools yet, but you're on your way. And this could actually jumpstart you into struggling to finding something that actually works for you. The veteran teachers, you're going to do something that I like to do at the end of the day, which is assess what you just prepared. How did it go? Sometimes it will not go as planned, but that doesn't mean that your plan failed. That just means you need to assess what worked, what didn't work, and what may not ever work. But how do you know what the impact on your students were? Because what you may think was a failed lesson may actually turn out to be great. What you may think was a great lesson may turn out to be a failure for the students. So it's the two of you that will assess you. Whether you have kindergartners or you have 12th graders and everything in between, the students can assess you. Why are students qualified to assess the teacher's lesson? Because for one, they are the receivers of the lesson. You're teaching it to them. They're going to be the determining factor on whether or not that lesson failed or it soared. Students are very insightful because, especially the little kids, they are raw with what they say, not to be hurtful when they're saying it. But if you ask them, did you like this lesson? Most likely they will say yes or no. The bigger kids may not tell you verbally if they liked your lesson, if the lesson needed something else, or if, oh, it was very boring. There may be some students that will tell you that, but most of the students, and you want everyone's opinion, not just the outspoken student, the best way to get that is through an exit ticket. And yes, you can teach your kindergartners how to create and how to complete an exit ticket. It's just more simple for a kindergartner and it's more complex for your middle school and high school kids. So you want to create a exit ticket that does the assessment reflection for you without you saying, did you like my lesson? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? And you're going to ask whatever benchmark you're reaching for, you're going to ask your students, what did they learn? And they're going to probably give it to you generally because they don't want to write about it. They don't want to talk about it. And then you're going to ask another question. Give me one example of what you learned. That's how you're going to know whether or not they actually got something from what you gave them. If they did, then you know that at least maybe 75, 80%, that lesson went well. Then you can ask your students in whatever way you have set your classroom up to have a collaborative conversation about what goes on in your classroom. You can ask your students, what did they like about the lesson that we had? That way, you're not asking, did you like it or not? You're saying, what did you like? In their minds, if I tell my teacher what I liked, she's going to do more lessons like that. So they are going to be very honest in how they respond to you with that answer. You can then take that information and assess, did it give you what you were looking for? If you didn't get the output that you wanted, go back, refine your lesson, refine your plans, whatever part of it you felt that needed to be adjusted, go back and adjust it accordingly and try it again. Get your students accustomed to filling out exit tickets. Sometimes you may have to do a verbal one if you say maybe run over time, or if the students tend to be more verbally forthcoming with information than they are with writing it. Maybe sometimes the writing takes longer than maybe the 3 or 4 minutes that you want to give them to complete an exit ticket. And then at the end of your school day, do an exit ticket for yourself before leaving. Did I accomplish everything I wanted to accomplish? Because also your organization system is going to come into play as well. If you were not able to complete everything that you wanted to do today, you need to figure out why not. If those things were very important in ending the day and starting tomorrow, then you want to make sure that tomorrow you do complete everything. Maybe you came in a little bit late. That's something that you can fix. Maybe there was a fire drill That's something you cannot fix. So you need to anticipate there may be an interruption that you did not plan for, but that does not mean that you can't meet your goal. Sometimes you may have to double up. Did you bring your lunch today? If you ate lunch while you were at work and you didn't have to go out and get it, then maybe you could make up for the 10 minutes you spent out at the fire drill doing it there at lunchtime because you didn't have to leave the school building to go and get lunch, or you didn't have to go down to the teacher's lounge to warm up your food because maybe you brought a salad or you brought a sandwich or whatever the case may be. There may be something there that could keep you on track. So you want to assess yourself as well as your students when you are trying to refine your skills for figuring out the best way to continue to move forward. The second thing we're going to talk about is your professional development. Now, I know we sometimes don't like to have professional development trainings because I've heard some people say it gives them more anxiety because now there's something new that I have to implement. But that's not necessarily true. If you are selecting professional development based on what you need, not because I need points to recertify to get my certificate renewed at the end of a certain period. Yes, you want to do both, but you also want to actually learn more. If we moved away from paper 5 years ago, but you're still using paper and you haven't implemented one digital activity other than the one that the school has assigned you to do, and you're not really comfortable with that, then you want to start learning some skills in the technology realm to help you, because technology is not going away. It is not going away. So if you're not comfortable with using technology, then that is something that you want to dive into on your own and be comfortable with what you're selecting for your growth, because you, as well as your students, will grow together. So you want to be able to keep up with whatever it is that's happening with them. This past maybe about 3 weeks ago now, I participated in a educational expo where I presented. So I presented 2 classes. I also attended 2 classes. One of those classes, I learned something. It had nothing to do with professional development that the school wanted to offer me. It had nothing to do with what I teach specifically, which is reading. It had nothing to do with that. But because I teach a group of gifted students, I decided, wow, this would be something great to give to them in an enrichment activity that I know they would love. So this happened to be a podcast from a fellow teacher. No, I did not know her, but it looked very interesting when I saw it on the list of classes to choose from. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I loved this class. This class was something that I could immediately take back to my classroom and implement into the day. Did I have to do some lesson planning changes? I did. Did I have to do preparation? I did. This class happened to be a podcast. And I know you're thinking, a podcast? Well, how is a podcast going to help students? Well, at first, when she said it, I was thinking the same thing. How is that going to help my students? Well, what I learned is speaking, listening, writing, spelling, all of those things were in there. I could easily manipulate how the students would use the podcast by giving them a few standards to work with in creating what the conversation of the podcast would be, how long it would be, which meant they would have to write direct questions, maybe a range of questions I gave them, or you could give your students if you're thinking about using something like this. You could arrange your questions to go from DOK 1 to DOK 4, depending on the level of students that you have. Now, yes, I do have gifted kids, and that does not mean that your regular grade level kids could not perform a podcast. They could with your help. The students still needed my help because they had not done anything like this before. So I needed to show them how this would turn out. So that's where your gradual release comes in. You would being able to, first, you do it. You show the students how it should be done. And then you and the students will do a podcast together. That's where you would then direct them to what is great, what is mediocre, what is more of what you're looking for, where they're going to get that A or that B. And then the students will do the same steps on their own. Something that I learned in that 1 hour from a fellow colleague that I was able to immediately take back to my classroom and start working on that. Hopefully, you will be able to find things that you can immediately take back when you go to a professional development, whether it was a mandatory professional development that, say, maybe your grade level is doing or your school is doing. If you're a magnet school, then you may have things that, as a magnet school, all of the teachers may need to attend. All of that, you can look for something. How do I implement something like that into my classroom? How can I make this fun? Do I have to go and do it step by step as the person that gave the class suggested? No, you don't. Because if you do, it's going to be more stress on you if that's not where that's not where you're easily comfortable working from. Everyone should be teaching from their comfort zone. If your comfort zone is not having a lot of kids have different conversations at different stations, then don't try that. Maybe have one conversation in one of the stations and the other ones are working on something else. Or have no conversations and then you come back later and you have them debrief. What were we doing? What happened? What didn't happen? How do we want to switch over to the next thing? Always make sure that whatever you're doing, you're comfortable with, even if you are duplicating something that you saw happen with someone else. Make it your own. That's what's going to make it great. That's also what's going to give you less frustration because you're doing you. And the students are going to enjoy you doing you more than you trying to duplicate what you saw someone else do. So your professional development should always be something that you can choose. Does it always have to be for the points to renew? It does not. Like the class that I gave, like something like this live. This could be a professional development because it's going to develop you professionally. No, you're not going to get points for it, but will you learn from it? Yes, that's what you're looking for. Things that you can easily take back to your classroom and explore with your students so that you grow and your students grow. Another strategy that we want to talk about is staying current. So I mentioned earlier in the beginning how we were thrust into this world of technology. And it kind of took a train during the pandemic. We were already kind of heading there slowly, and the pandemic just kind of like rushed us down the track. And now everything has become, let's use a piece of technology to assist us in doing this thing. Is it a good thing? I will say yes, because I love technology. Some people that don't like technology may say, well, not so. I still like paper and pencil. And that does not mean that you don't have to that you have to cut off paper and pencil. You don't. You can still have a paper pencil activity that you control. Maybe on Wednesdays, the kids are writing. Writing is great on paper and pencil. Although testing may take place by computer, but you still want to work on that penmanship. You still want them to have that time where They don't have to worry about the computer not working. Oh, I typed the wrong thing. You want to develop that paper pencil feel. What if the computers aren't working and it's on a test day and they say, oh, we have to do paper and pencil, but your students aren't familiar with writing on paper and pencil. So yes, there's still reasons to use paper pencil, and you should if that's what you like. Because remember, this is your class. This is what you're doing for your students. So whatever the way is that works best for you and your students, you do that. However, if we are changing from a lot of paper pencil activities to more activities being digital for students, you need to be comfortable with using it, because that's ultimately where you're going to assess your students. So you need to select, even if you create, you need to be comfortable with what you're giving the students. Also, a lot of collaboration is happening where students are doing more peer-to-peer activities. That's something else that is constantly changing. Students are doing more activities where they're working on their own. It's almost like Montessori is coming back, but differently. Students are able to do a lot of things that we're not aware of the capabilities just yet. So there's a lot of ways to assess what they can do. Activities don't have to only be paper and pencil. Activities can also be projects. If the students are into that, if they like the feel of touching things, projects. The best student can show you how they excel when they are working in their own comfort zone. Figure out how your students learn. Give them more projects where they're speaking. This world of technology, like I'm sitting here talking to you live, I don't know where you may be looking at me from. Have no idea where you've joined in from. Your students are accustomed to seeing videos. You'd be surprised how many of them may want to be in one of these videos. Allow your students to move with the transition of education. It is never a bad thing to do. Allow your students to be involved in what's happening in the classroom. Don't shut them out and just treat them as the students are here and you're going to do what I say, and I'm the teacher and I'm going to be over here and I'm going to plan for everything. You guys can work together. And working together sometimes can relieve a lot of the stress and the frustrations, because I promise you, they want the rules and they want to help. They also want to excel. They want to excel. And that's one thing that you're there for. So when you're selecting your professional development, so I'm going to go back and touch on that a little bit more. When you're selecting your professional development, think of it as a two-way. You want to go into the professional development looking for something that you feel you need to elevate your students, whether it's something you're deficient in or something the students are deficient in, but something to elevate your students. When you do that, make sure that at least in some area, if it's only the last 5 minutes of the lesson or somewhere in between, make sure that there's a moment where the students do have some participation in assisting you in getting it across what it is that you want the students to learn. The more the students are allowed to take ownership of their education, the better it will be for you. Even if you started off in kindergarten, remember, they're not aware of what's happening in school. That is probably the best time to assist your students in molding them to be the type of students that they need to be, regardless of what teacher they have next or what school they go to. If the students are aware very early on how to take ownership and be responsible and be held accountable for what they're doing in the classroom, the better that school year will be for whatever teacher they have. So prepare them always as if you will be the teacher next school year. I did that one year, and it was the best eye opener as a newer teacher because I had a second grade class. And I thought I was just doing the absolute best in preparing them for third grade by going beyond the curriculum. So we were already prepared for third grade before they got there. And unbeknownst to me, when I got my roster, it's the same kids. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, these are the same kids. This must be a mistake, but it wasn't. It was the best thing for me. We came back, we jumped back into the school year as if the last one never ended. It was easier to see that what I had planted and how it took roots, sprouted up. We had lovely roses at the end of the school year because their test scores were great. We had a great time because I didn't have to spend a lot of time laying the foundation for skills that were new to them. I had no idea that I would still be their teacher. Now, had that been a newer teacher, that teacher would have experienced the same amount of entertainment, the fun activities, the lighter stress load, because the students were still prepared, whether it was for me or for someone else. So that is what your professional development should do for you. It should make you more excited. It should make you prepared for the next school year, where you're going to go, what you're going to do, even for the next, we don't have to look that far into the future, but just for the next week, what are we going to do next week? There should be some things that you come across that you want to implement, and you should easily have the capabilities to implement those things the next week into your lesson plans without shaking it up too much. But it will take some time. You need to decide what's changing and how you can change with what's changing. Because you're not familiar with it doesn't mean that you can't become very comfortable doing it. There is always someone that knows how to do very well what it is that you're struggling with. Whether it's on social media, whether you found a class online, if it's in another county, another city, even another state. It doesn't always have to be the professional development that your job offers, because that is the development that they absolutely want you to do. What about the professional development that you absolutely need to do for your students? That's the professional development that I'm also talking about, more so than what you're already going to get, because remember, it's being delivered from their purview, not yours. They're given this in whole groups, so it's not always going to be tailored to those that know and those that don't know, because they're going to find the most proficient person in that field to teach it to you, and they're going to assume that because this person is very well versed in this activity, that they're able to differentiate the learning of the teachers. That doesn't always happen. We leave away sometimes with more questions than we have information. So we want to make sure that we're suggesting that what we're giving everyone is going to work. So, the practical tips for teachers, that's what I want to talk about also. And that's the last thing that we are going to talk about. The practical tips for teachers is the organization part. That part somehow keeps popping up like popcorn in everything that we're discussing. The organization is going to assist you with getting so much done, with getting exactly what you want, because also we're still somehow connected to this professional development. When your school gives these great PDs, you're not the only one that wanted or needed or saw it. If that room only holds 30 teachers, you want to make sure that you're one of those teachers. They may not give that class again for, I don't know, any more this school year, if they give it at all again. So you want to make sure that you're in there. How do you do that? By being organized. By being organized. You need to make sure that you have everything in the places that it needs to be in. How do I organize? I figure out what I need. I make sure those things are available, and I make sure that they work for me. So I have an ebook that is on my website, theteachercompanion.com. It is called From Chaos to Clarity. That ebook goes down a list of how to stay organized. It is a free ebook. Please go and download this ebook. You will find that being organized, and your students can help you do this as well, will save you a lot of time. Just think about when you're out, you have to leave plans for someone to continue your lessons. Let's be honest. When we're out, we spend more time preparing for the substitute than we prepare when we're in class. That we don't have time for, because there's also, I may only be out one day. If I'm back the next day, I have to come back now and pretend like I was there the day before. So that planning cannot be the entire time to prepare for the substitute to execute what I would have done if I was there, because a veteran teacher will understand what I'm getting ready to say. Having a substitute is just having someone there with my kids. Many times the substitute do not carry it out the way we actually plan. Things happen. They may arrive late. They may have issues with whatever the routine is of the day. Maybe taking attendance is an issue. They weren't able to print it off, so the sub waited. Or you normally send Johnny to go get the laptops from room 17, and now that teacher's out today. Johnny doesn't know where to go get these laptops from because his teacher isn't there. The teacher for room 17 isn't there. The substitute is new to your building. She doesn't know where to get these items from. Anything could happen to throw off the time. Maybe the lesson plans that you left, the sub had to go and get clarity on, well, what is it that they want me to do? Where do I find this? How do I get into that? So sometimes the lessons don't happen. So now what's going to happen? If you're organized, you are prepared for the little things that happen that you can't control. So I want you to always stay on top of where you are, what's happening, and how to quickly get back to something that you are comfortable with, that you like, that you've created. The day of working in an error-free world is never come. I'm sorry. It just hasn't. I don't think it ever will, because things are forever changing. There is always something that comes up. Like, for example, fire drill. It always comes up. They don't always tell us when it's going to be. We have code reds, code blues, code yellows, or whatever you call them at your school district. We have those drills. We don't know when those are going to happen. Sometimes teachers are absent. There may be no subs. You may have to take on a few extra kids from another classroom. You may be told, Miss Jones, Mr. Johnson, you have to go to a professional development at another school site location tomorrow. Or maybe it's still in your building, but you're not with your students to assist them with whatever is happening. You didn't plan for that. So somehow you have to make sure that your organization of your classroom will help you with those unforeseen interruptions so that you don't feel more stressed because now I'm missing a day. My lesson took exactly 5 days. Now I only have 4 days. How am I going to make up a day? That's more stressful. But if you're a little organized, you'll figure out a way that will help you. The students can also help you. For example, if I'm out, I can guarantee you that I'm not missing a day. You know how? My students are prepared. We have a routine on Mondays. There's whatever it is we do on Mondays, the students know. If I'm there or not, they're doing it. Tuesdays, we have a specific activity that we do. Wednesdays, a specific activity that we do. Thursday and Friday is always assessment day, whether it's a teacher assessment, whether it's spelling, grammar, vocabulary, or the actual assessment of the standards that we've been talking about all week. It happens on Fridays. My students know this. I have introduced them to this routine without fail every year for at least the last 15 years. When I figured out that that was the key to keep it consistent, it has worked for me. I don't know the last time I have brought home anything to grade, read, or prepare. Now, in the beginning of the school year, yes, I always do, but I plan for that. It is expected that I'm going to bring home certain things because I want a little bit more time. Unfortunately, I am a perfectionist. I like for things to be done a certain way. And when I'm working on something, I don't like to be interrupted. And as you know, if you're at the school, even if you're the only one there, someone's going to come in and interrupt if they see that your car is in the parking lot, or they pass by your room and they can hear that you're in there or see that you're in there. You are going to be interrupted. Whereas if you're at home, you can set aside that time. You can turn your ringer off, put on your music, and just work on whatever it is you're working on until you complete it. Once you've completed the thing that you need to work on and you take it back to that school, you do not need to bring it home ever again. Ever. Unless you fall off, which I don't anticipate will happen if you're using that system. You're using it, your students are using it. It should be fine, but you need to create it. You really do. You need to create it. So finally, we're going to develop a growth mindset. So every year, you should be saying, last year went great, but there's a thing that I want to do better this year. Or I want to implement that again this year, but I'm going to take away this part. I'm going to add that part. And of course, you're thinking, well, what if you get a different grade level next year? It doesn't matter. If you started a routine with kindergarten, make it applicable to 5th grade. The only difference is the complexity of what's going to happen between a kindergartner and a 5th grader or a 12th grader. They need less. Kindergartners, they need more. Does it mean the routine can't be implemented at any grade level? If you say, no, it can't, then create it so that it does. Because every year, we don't know where we're going to be. We do get that assignment at the end of the school year, but sometimes things change. Teachers leave that weren't expected to leave. Principals change. You come in, you got a new principal. They may not let you stay there. Sometimes you lose a teacher. Now you may be asked to work in a different grade level or perform at a different capacity within the school. So things change. Your organization system should be flexible. You should be ready to pivot with whatever happens. Because if it's your classroom, where the change is happening, you need to make sure that it's not going to stress you out any more than it has to, because there is a new grade level that I'm working on, and I have no idea how to work on this one because I've never done this grade level before, or it's been many years that I've taught this grade level. And so now, I wasn't prepared for this. Of course, the lessons won't be the same, but the standards are probably going to be the same, maybe not as complex, or maybe more complex if you're moving up with bigger students. But you can do it because it's yours. Once you've created it, it's yours. So you can adapt it to whatever you need it to be adaptable for. So we want to make sure that we're always encountering those challenges with not feeling down, but feeling upbeat, as though, I can take this and I can move forward in whatever it is that I'm working on, however I need to work things out. But by all means, professional development, we're back on that train again. Once you see that something has changed, you need to jump in and seek the help that you need, and not wait for someone to say, oh, you're new to kindergarten, let's put you in a class. Oh, you're new to 7th grade math, let's get you in a class. You know where you need someone to meet you to be successful. Be proactive, find them for yourselves. No, again, it does not always have to be in a classroom setting by your district. There's so many people that have expertise in what it is that you do. Like I said, I gave a class, but I also took a class. Something that I needed for enriching gifted students. I don't know everything about it. I've only had a gifted classroom for about maybe 5 years now. I had no idea that there was so many different levels of things that I could do with them. Some of it I understood from the beginning. Some of it I had no idea existed or what to do with it when I discovered it. But I knew that the kids would benefit from me being somewhat very familiar with what I needed to teach them, and we would learn together. And we did. And if we can, so can you. So I want you to make sure that you are keeping track of what works and what didn't work. Put it on your planner. Put it on your calendar. Make a to-do list. Whatever you need to do. Today I tried this. Worked like a charm. Broke down in the middle, needed more assistance. I need to go back and revisit. I need to make it shorter. I need to make it longer. I need to put more questions inside of it. Whatever you need to do, you need to create a list to see what's working. Don't overwork yourself. And sometimes that's what's creating your frustration, because you're overworking yourself. You feel that you always need to be hands-on. Remember, the person doing all of the work is doing all of the learning. Think about what I just said. The person doing all of the work is doing all of the learning. So if that person is you, what are your students learning? They need to be doing more of the work, and then you can pull back a little bit and facilitate what you've already shown them what to do and how to do it. Sometimes in that moment of quiet while you're watching them work is a moment that you can start to decompress. I had to learn that. And I'm glad I learned it early, because that's when I started to leave things at work and just do them there and come home and enjoy not being at work and do the things that I want to do. The work-life balance is very important. Very, very, very important. So make sure that you are in a position to create a work-life balance. So let's wrap up this episode and let's review the takeaways. So we have refining your teaching crafts because it requires a commitment to a reflective practice. That's what it does. It's continually making you reflect on what's going on. That way you're being committed to what it is that you're doing because you're checking whatever you're checking is what you're going to be able to perfect. Also, your ongoing professional development, that also shows your willingness to learn more, to be better at whatever it is that you're working on. And then we want to remember that the journey is all about progress. Doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect, but it's about the progress that you make every time you take a class, every time you watch a webinar, every time you read a book, every time you implement something new. Progress. Progress. So I encourage you to take these strategies back to your classrooms. Today, you can start working on how to make these activities or something that I said work in your classroom. You can start working on it next week. Let me know how it's working for you. Send me an email, send me a text message. You can follow me on all social media platforms, The Teacher Companion. If you're emailing me, my email is sanjay@theteachercompanion.com. I would love to hear from you. I would love to also help you and answer questions about implementing anything that I've mentioned, anything that you want to work on. Send me an email. I am here for you. I'm always willing to assist you, and I love watching you grow. I'm going to say it again, I love watching you grow. So thank you for joining in, but let's make it a great, great, great week. Have a great one. Good night.